It's as if after the DNC, they made the decision that they would represent the American center, and that under this, the American center will hold against the extremists.
Mm.
But that's a hard sell. I think it's a hard sell. Here's why it's a hard sell. And I think this is really important. And you say this a lot on your show. The American center has failed the American people. Like, the
Right.
American people know that our major social institutions, healthcare, really in the news right now, but
Oh, yeah.
healthcare, the banking system, housing, the food system, and environment, public schools, that
Mm.
all of these things, the judiciary, the police, that all of these major institutions are failing us. And
Right.
someone has to name it. And Trump, to his credit, named it. He
Mm.
said this country is in a shambles, and a lot of people feel that way. Now, he then goes on to explain why it's in a shambles, and he points the finger at immigrants rather than at billionaires like himself who are looting the country. Okay, but at least he named it. I think when the Democrats turned around and said, we represent the center, a lot of people said, okay, but whatever that is, things aren't working for me. And
Right.
Trump
Right.
was the only one who was saying, I get things aren't working. Here's how I'm going to fix it.
Yeah. It felt like a 2024 version of the Southern strategy in a lot of ways. And in that appeal to sort of some of the base level beliefs that so many people bring into the electoral space. And I'm thinking, as we move into this next era, which frankly, as a Black woman who does this work on air and who who organizes in my community, some of the things that I'm concerned about really have their roots in some conversations you and I have had together previously. The inability to talk about race without sort of buying into the dog whistle framework has already been a challenge for people. But now we're entering into an era where there's no more diversity, equity, and inclusion. All the racial justice is not even that the guilt money after George Floyd evaporated. They have retrenched, they have clawed
Yes.
back so many
Yes.
elements of justice. We are seeing, from my perspective, what feels very much like the historical period we know as Reconstruction. It feels like another effort to dismantle all of the legal principles that have allowed integration to flourish as an American policy, flourish such as it has. And so now we're moving into an era where legally it's becoming more challenging for organizations to say, I focus on XYZ disproportionately marginalized group. It's been
Right.
difficult. And we are at the Center for Law and Social Justice, the law center that I'm so privileged to serve as executive director in. We are now putting together some guidance for how organizations that focus on marginalized communities, how you can continue to do that without landing yourself in a
Right.
lawsuit at the hands of the Ed Blums of the world. And what is it going to mean for those of us who are still trying to do this work? Because quite frankly, the problems didn't evaporate just because our ability to be specific in the language seems to have come under legal fire. One of my big concerns is as we move forward, I don't know how to live in Jim Crow. Like I'm a Gen Xer, so I don't know anything about living in Jim Crow other than what I've read and what I've seen in terms of documentaries. So that obviously is a fear and a concern. But then also, what does this do to disrupt our organizing capacity and our ability to really meet the needs of people who are going to rely on us because their needs haven't changed again, even though the language has. And so as we're moving into this new space, as someone who studied race in the Constitution, what do you see coming down the pike in terms of our ability to continue to move our communities forward, our ability to continue advocating on behalf of people in our communities who desperately need it in a world where the 14th Amendment is sort of being retooled to protect white people from accusations of being racist, as opposed to, for example, protecting Black people from the structural racism that has seemed to permeate this society's infrastructure?
Totally. Totally. So, such great insights. Let me respond in two ways. And I think that they both have different implications. And that's why I want to use them both. On the one hand, what we're seeing is this classic effort to respond to civil rights and to respond to integration measures as if those are revenge upon white people, right? And so this is a
Yeah.
way of promoting the idea that DE&I is really rooted in hatred of white people. Barack Obama hates white people. Woke hates white people. Like, right? So it creates a sense of victimization in the most powerful group in society. It says, hey, white
Mm.
people, you're the real victims here. And the victimizers or all those people who are calling for social justice, right? Like they're really racist against you. And so that's a very important goal of the right wing right now. That's what they're doing. They've been very successfully doing that. If we think about it only on that level, it's tempting then to sort of redouble our efforts to denounce white people, to strip that mantle of victimization from them, to be like, you're not a victim, you're a bigot, right? Like to really respond by saying, stop with the victimization stuff. That's not true. You're actually a bigot when you turn around and say, I hate woke because woke, makes me be careful about using the N-word or proper pronouns or whatever. Okay. So yes, it's true that the right is trying to convince white people that they are the victims in our society. It is also true that they are doing so because the right knows that the way billionaires seize power in any society, and billionaires, that's just the term du jour, but the lords, the titans, the sort of people of great wealth and power, the way the people of great wealth and power, well, let's call them the billionaire lords, the way billionaire lords seize power is by breaking social solidarity. You turn people against each other so that they're busy living in fear, living in conflict of each other, while the lords are in their castles behind their moats and their stone walls and with their hired army. That's how the lords rule a society, by breaking social solidarity. And in that sense, everything the court is doing to slow and reverse integration, everything the attacks on DE&I are doing to slow and reverse integration, everything the attacks on wokeism is doing, everything the attacks on racial studies is doing to slow our ability to have a sophisticated conversation about how race actually works in our society and who it actually serves, every one of those things is geared to breaking social solidarity. And it's working, and it's gonna work. Right? It's going to be much harder to create a sense of linked fate across race lines.
Right.
If we don't know each other, if we're not in the same spaces, if we don't have anything but the most primitive, reductive understanding of racism. If that's the goal of the right, then what does that imply in terms of our response? That implies we need to build social solidarity. That if their goal is to break social solidarity so that the lords can divide us and rule over us, we need to build social solidarity so we have enough power that we can stand up to the lords. We can regulate them, we can redistribute their wealth, we can tear down their castle walls and use those to build roads for the rest of us. But we need broad-based power rooted in social solidarity. And what that means on the race level is, as organizers and activists, we have to resist that first tendency to denounce white people generally and focus, right? Like this is not the time now to say the masks are off, the majority of white people again voted for Trump. Now we know we're a nation of bigots. I think that's wrong analytically. I definitely think it's wrong sort of strategically as a theory of social change. What we need to say is, God damn, divide and conquer works. It worked again, and now here we are. And if we don't understand divide and conquer, and if we don't intentionally build social solidarity, we will never have the power to protect our families, let alone what we're trying to build in this country, right? And so that's what's really important for organizers to see. This is about the right's ability, the billionaire lord's ability to break social solidarity, and this is about our ability to build it.
So I see that. You see that. So many of the people that I organize with see that. But if we're talking about building solidarity, social solidarity, and a significant group of the people who would benefit from said social solidarity have historically and in the most recent election largely voted to destroy the basis of our ability to organize in a socially solid space, what are we to do with that? I don't mind. I love what Reverend Dr. William Barber is doing. I think being able to organize on the needs of the people as opposed opposed to racial lines. I think that's exactly what should happen. We saw that if you go back to what is it, 1890s Wilmington, North Carolina, where were formerly enslaved Africans and poor white farmers were like, you know what? We both need teeth in our mouths, which means we need access to a dentist. We're going to organize together. They were able to successfully engage in electoral politics together. And then wealthy, the billionaire lords of that day came in on horseback and were like, nope, we're not doing it. I know y'all won these elections, but you're out of here, bub. And the white community members in those spaces, and yes, I know fear plays a part, of course, but they were like, okay, and they went along with it. And so if we are trying to build cross-racial solidarity on the fact that we all want a house, we all want schools for our kids, we all want to be able to go to the supermarket and come home with a load of groceries so that we're not hungry. If we are engaging in that work in good faith, but our white counterparts who would benefit from all that we are hoping to collaborate on, if they are choosing vis-a-vis their electoral policies to center and to prioritize their access to whiteness over their need for housing, apprenticeship, jobs, and healthcare, how do we grapple with that? Like, do we need white people to talk to I don't know. That's where I'm like, we all need teeth. We all need healthcare. We all need a house. What are we to do with that? Because I don't think I did not see Black organizers or Latino organizers or Asian organizers, even though those groups, we all have issues and beef with each other, but I didn't see them sacrificing our ability to get our needs met in the same way that white poor people and white voters did in ways that I can't make sense of it, other than white supremacy is really expensive, and I guess it keeps you warm at night when the heater is off, because it certainly isn't keeping me warm at night. Maybe you don't need a house to sleep in if you're covered with the joys of being white. I don't know.
Yeah. So let me respond in two ways. One, whiteness, and the other, like, is the source of the challenge the people in general or organizations? Okay, so on the whiteness thing, I think you're absolutely right to put your finger on whiteness and say, hey, it's people who think whiteness will keep them warm, who are voting for people like Donald Trump and are actually going to like rip the blankets off of all of us, right? And you look at what that administration's promising. But here's the point I want to make. The appeals to whiteness, yeah, that's maybe 6 out of 10 whites, but 4 out of 10 whites are voting against it. And at the same time, the appeal to whiteness.
Okay, wait, hold on. I'm going to let that sit for a minute, because I know the audience is like, oh, wait, right, forgot about that. It wasn't all of them.
It wasn't all of them.
It wasn't all of them.
It was like 6 out of 10, but that's 4 out of 10 who are not. Now look at Latinos. It's 4 out of 10 Latinos who are voting for whiteness. For whiteness, right? Because I ran major focus groups. I think I did one of the biggest studies ever done with Latino voters. I can tell you the voters the Latinos who are most attracted to Trump's sort of messages were the voters who were really anxious about where Latinos fit in the racial hierarchy in the United States and wanted to see Latinos as a group closer to being white than to being Black. And I'm making a fine point here. It was not about the skin color of the Latinos themselves. It was their sense of the status of the group. They wanted the group to be seen as more like European immigrants and less like African immigrants or descendants of enslaved people. The more they believed that, the more sympathetic they were to voting for Trump. In other words, and I'll just bring it down to immigrants. Think about an immigrant coming into this country and what's on offer. You can be white or you can be Black. And it doesn't matter what color that immigrant is. If they have a fair shot at claiming to be white or claiming that status, they're going to go for it. And they're going to go for it to protect themselves and to protect their children. So
and that's logical, folks. I know I can feel the audience bristling at this, but these are logic. People are making logical decisions. Do I want to side with the group that I have seen that has power, or do I want to side with the group that I've seen is at the bottom rung of society? Rational thinking people are making decisions, and it's a logical decision to want to side.
And even if they're not thinking about it rationally, right? Like consciously laying it out, spreadsheet, they're thinking about it intuitively. Right? They're thinking about it intuitively. They're looking around and saying, whoa, white people have a lot of the good stuff. Whoa, Black people, I look at the TV, I look at the news, I look at everything. It's like they're the criminals, they're the poor. Which am I, right? Like just intuitively, right? So this whiteness thing, we don't just have to fight it among white people, right? What is the number? Something like 1 out of 9 African Americans are themselves immigrants or have an immigrant parent. We
Mm,
right, and we know that a lot of people of African descent who are immigrants to the United States are also busy trying to position themselves. Are they African American in this descent from slavery sort of way, or are they different because they're immigrants with a different heritage and a different level of all of that stuff?
yeah.
Whiteness is something that operates in every racial community in the United States, whether that community is considered white or not. So whiteness is a problem. We got to face it in everybody.